Towards the end of August, the crickets in Denver collectively lose their minds. Seriously, walking down the street at night, you can hear their wild mating calls buzz in the trees like heaps of live wire. And towards the end of August, my mom goes crazy with the crickets. Maybe it's the fact that the seasons are changing once again, or that in a couple of weeks, she's going to have to lead classrooms of loud, noisy, and rambunctious 9-year-olds on their quest to understanding grammar. But something inside her snaps when the crickets begin their calls. It's around the time that the crickets go wild that the maps come out. My sister and I would take one look at the AAA road maps of America sprawled out on the kitchen table and mentally prepare ourselves for what we knew was going to be a long trip. It was the summer I was about to turn 14 when my mom got it into her head that she wanted to go to Carhenge. Carhenge was built in 1987 in Alliance, Nebraska, as a replication of the prehistoric English monument, except the one in Nebraska, instead of being made of stone, was made entirely out of old cars. To my mom, that summer, Carhenge was the place to be, the destination site all Americans should head to. It was also about a 7-hour drive into the middle of nowhere, Nebraska. Our green Volkswagen Beetle headed off towards Carhenge early in the morning, filled to the brim with coolers chock full of provisions, sleeping bags, books on tape, my sister, and me. If you've ever been on a road trip, you know that personal space is hard to come by. Now imagine going on that road trip with 3 people and tons of stuff in one of the tiniest cars imaginable. By this point, we had been all over the U.S. in that car, and the beginning of every trip went about the same. I made it very clear that I was not excited to be living out of a car for a couple of months and spending hours on end sitting in a space so small I couldn't sit cross-legged. At the start of this trip to Carhenge, like every other, I spent a lot of time pestering my sister needlessly in the first couple of hours. I flat out refused to listen to Ruby Holler by Sharon Creech, the book on tape we had for that ride, or look at any of the things my mom pointed out on the way that she thought were beautiful. But when we finally got there and climbed out of the car splattered with thousands upon thousands of dead bugs, and walked through a field towards a bunch of gray cars standing on end in the shape of Stonehenge, I was excited. Regardless of where you are going, even if it is to the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, after a journey, a real voyage, something that takes hours to accomplish, you always get that adrenaline rush, like, hey, we finally made it, we got here, we did something real. I remember that my sister and I held hands in the center of the cars and closed our eyes, trying to call up any druid magic that this imitation place might hold. Driving back home, my sister and I built forts in the back seat and tried to make ourselves as small as possible. My mom paused the Ruby Holler tape every 10 minutes or so to point out something random and beautiful, and we'd have to crawl up out of our hideaway to see what it was. Those crazy crickets and their desperate late summer calls ignited my mom's desire to just go, to pack up the car and drive, bring the tent and find someplace new. I've seen rows of sunflowers stream past my window in more states than I can count. I've fallen off a donkey deep in the belly of Texas, fallen asleep to the sound of waves on the beach of California, and walked through a forest in Oregon that was so green the air felt like a light pool of water dancing around my head. And when I drive anywhere now, even on the busy Chicago highways, I bet you I can find something so random, so surprising, it's beautiful.